The fall of Viral 7. The twin suns of Viral 7 cast golden light across endless fields of gene-modified wheat, their stalks swaying in the artificial breeze generated by atmospheric processors. Governor Sarah Chin stood on the observation deck of the colony's central hub, watching harvest drones dance between rows like mechanical ballet dancers. 80,000 souls called this world home. Farmers, engineers, teachers, children who'd never seen Earth except in holovids. They turned a barren rock into breadbasket in just 15 years. Governor, we have a problem. Marcus Webb's voice crackled through her calm, tension straining each syllable. Sarah's reflection in the transparent steel windows showed a woman who'd aged a decade in the last 5 years. Leadership did that. Define problem, Marcus. Hyperspace signatures. Multiple. Big ones. Pause. Ma'am, it's a war fleet. The world seemed to tilt. Sarah gripped the railing, her knuckles whitening. Sound general alert. Get everyone to shelters. Now. She sprinted toward the command center, her heart hammering against her ribs. Through corridor windows, she glimpsed the sky darkening as massive shapes blotted out the suns. Ships. Dozens of them, their hulls like obsidian knives cutting through space. The Imperial Dominion had arrived. The command center erupted in controlled chaos. Holographic displays painted the room in crimson light, each screen screaming warnings. Marcus hunched over the communications console, his dark skin gleaming with sweat. Around him, 24 personnel worked frantically, the entire defense coordination team for a colony that had never expected to need defending. They're hailing us, Marcus announced. On screen. The alien face that materialized made Sarah's stomach clench. Commander Zarthek of the Imperial Dominion possessed the kind of face that evolution designed for intimidation. Angular planes of bone beneath scaled skin, for eyes that glowed like coals, mandibles that clicked when he spoke through the translator. Human colony designated Viral 7. The translation software rendered his words in flat, emotionless tones that somehow made them worse. You occupy territory claimed by the Imperial Dominion under ancestral right. You have 1 rotation to evacuate. After that, we will sterilize the surface. Sarah stepped forward, forcing steel into her spine. This world was uninhabited when we arrived. We've filed all proper claims with the Galactic Council. You have no legal. We are the law in this sector, Zarthek interrupted. 1 rotation. Choose wisely, Governor Chin. The transmission cut. Sarah turned to her team. Marcus, send distress signals on all frequencies. Contact the Galactic Council, the Vex Conglomerate, the Seraphim Alliance. Everyone. Tell them we're under attack by the Dominion and need immediate assistance. Already on it, ma'am? Marcus's fingers flew across holographic interfaces. Quantum burst transmissions going out now. They'll reach Council space in 6 hours. What about our defenses? Security Chief James Nakamura pulled up tactical displays. We've got 12 orbital defense platforms, 60 atmospheric fighters and ground-based railguns. Against that, he gestured at the fleet overhead. We can maybe hold them off for 72 hours if we're lucky. We're farmers with guns, Sarah. They're career killers. Then we buy every hour we can. Sarah's voice didn't waver, though inside she felt like screaming. Get non-essential personnel into the deep shelters. Arm everyone who can hold a weapon. And pray someone out there gives a damn. The first response came 3 hours later. The Vex Conglomerate, insectoid traders who'd sold Viral 7 most of their equipment, sent a terse message. The Vex Conglomerate recognizes Imperial territorial claims in that sector. We cannot intervene. Recommend immediate evacuation. Safe travels. Sarah read it twice, unable to process the casual dismissal of 80,000 lives. The Seraphim Alliance responded an hour later, their crystalline emissary's face almost apologetic on screen. The Alliance maintains strict non-intervention protocols regarding Dominion space. We offer thoughts and prayers for your situation. Thoughts and prayers. Sarah wanted to put her fist through the screen. One by one they came, the polite refusals, the regretful denials, the carefully worded diplomatic cowardice. The Kryn Republic. The Nexus Confederacy. The Stellar Concordat. Every major power in the galaxy had an excuse, a treaty, a reason why 80,000 human lives weren't worth risking conflict with the Imperial Dominion. What about Earth? Someone asked. Marcus's expression said everything. No response yet. The signal won't reach Sol for another 20 hours, and even if they send help immediately. He didn't finish. They all knew the math. Earth was 42 light-years away. Even using the fastest hyperspace routes, a fleet would need 5 days minimum to arrive. The Dominion didn't give them 5 days. 16 hours after the ultimatum, the bombardment began. Sarah watched from deep underground as surface cameras showed the end of her world. Plasma beams lanced down from orbit, turning defense platforms into expanding clouds of molten metal. Imperieth fighters swarmed like locusts, their weapons reducing carefully tended fields to scorched earth. The central hub, where she'd stood just yesterday watching harvest drones, vaporized in a column of light that left afterimages burned into her retinas. Shelters holding, Nakamura reported, his voice hollow. Hull integrity at 87%. But if they keep this up, they'll crack us open like an egg, Sarah finished. She looked around the command bunker at faces tight with fear and rage. How long can we last? 3 days. Maybe 4 if we ration life support. 3 days. Sarah closed her eyes, thinking of the children in the shelters below, singing songs their teachers taught them to keep the fear away. 3 days until the air ran out or the Dominion punched through and flooded the tunnels with fire. Keep sending the distress signals, she ordered quietly. Every hour, on every channel. Marcus met her gaze and she saw her own despair reflected there. Ma'am, no one's coming. They've all made that clear. I know. Sarah's voice cracked. But we keep trying anyway. Because that's what humans do. The hours blurred together in a nightmare of status reports and dwindling hope. The bombardment continued with mechanical precision, the Dominion systematically erasing every structure on the surface. Occasionally, Imperieth ground forces probed the shelter entrances, and each time Viral 7's defenders drove them back at terrible cost. On the second day, Marcus intercepted a transmission between Dominion ships. Through the crackling static and translation artifacts, they heard Zarthek speaking to his fleet. Let them suffocate slowly. The humans have been abandoned by their galactic neighbors. Let this be a lesson, humanity stands alone. Sarah found herself in the children's shelter that night, unable to sleep. A little girl named Emma, maybe 6 years old, approached her with a drawing. It showed stick figures holding hands beneath a smiling sun. Is someone coming to save us? Emma asked, her voice small. Sarah knelt down, looking into those trusting eyes, and felt something break inside her chest. She couldn't lie. Not to this child. Not anymore. I don't know, sweetheart, she whispered. But we're not giving up. Never. Emma hugged her, and Sarah held her tight, feeling the weight of all her failures pressing down. The third day dawned, though dawn was meaningless in the underground dark. Oxygen levels had dropped to concerning levels. The bombardment had intensified, and cracks spider-webbed across sections of the shelter walls. Nakamura estimated 6 hours, maybe 8, before catastrophic structural failure. Marcus slumped at his console, still dutifully sending distress signals into the void. His eyes were sunken, haunted. Another response just came in. From Earth this time. Sarah's breath caught. And? It's odd. Just 2 words, acknowledged. Inbound. Marcus frowned at his screen. That's it. No ETA, no details. Sent 4 hours ago from. I can't trace the origin point. The encryption is military grade, beyond anything I've seen. Hope was a dangerous thing. Sarah had watched it die in her people's eyes over the past 72 hours. She wouldn't let it kindle again only to be crushed. Probably automated response, she said flatly. Don't mention it to anyone. But an hour later, Nakamura burst into her office, his face transformed. Governor, you need to see this. Sensors just detected something at the system's edge. More Dominion reinforcements? No. His grin was almost manic. Hyperspace ruptures. Hundreds of them. And the mass readings. He shook his head in disbelief. Ma'am, something very, very big just jumped into our system. Sarah ran to the command center. Every screen blazed with sensor data that seemed impossible. The displays showed massive hyperspace tears opening at the system's heliopause, each one berthing a ship into normal space. But not just ships, a fleet. An Armada. The sensor officer's voice shook. I'm reading 247 vessels. Carrier class, dreadnought class, cruiser class. Governor, where did all these ships come from? Marcus worked frantically at his console. I'm getting IFF signatures. Oh my God. They're human. The room went silent. That's impossible, Nakamura breathed. Earth doesn't have that kind of fleet. We know. Everyone would know. But the sensors didn't lie. 247 warships were accelerating in-system, their formation perfect, their trajectory locked on Viral 7. And at the center of that formation, one vessel dwarfed all others, a dreadnought 3 kilometers long, its hull etched with words visible even from this distance. Unus Indomitable. A transmission cut through all channels, the voice deep and carrying absolute authority. Viral, 7. This is Admiral Kale Arcturus of the United Nations Grand Armada. We received your call. Apologies for the delay, we came as fast as we could. A pause, and when he spoke again, Sarah heard iron and fire in his words. No human world will ever fall alone. Hold on. We're coming. Above them, through kilometers of rock and soil, the sky was about to catch fire. And for the first time in 3 days, Sarah Chin allowed herself to hope. The Armada arrives. The hyperspace ruptures looked like God was tearing holes in reality. Commander Zarthek of the Imperieth Dominion watched from his flagship's observation deck as space itself fractured, bleeding light that shouldn't exist. His tactical officer's mandibles clicked in distress as sensor returns painted impossible pictures, each rupture birthing warships that had no right to exist. Status report, Zarthek commanded, his 4 eyes fixed on the approaching fleet. 247 vessels confirmed, his tactical officer reported. Mass readings suggest. Commander, some of these ships are larger than our dreadnoughts. Configuration unknown. Energy signatures. I've never seen anything like this. They're human, Zarthek said, studying the IFF markers. A species barely past their planetary cradle. They shouldn't possess even a dozen interstellar warships. Perhaps they purchased them? Or hired mercenaries? Zarthek's scales rippled, the Imperieth equivalent of a dismissive laugh. No mercenary fleet moves with that precision. Those are military vessels. Purpose-built. Battle-tested. He turned to his communications officer. Hail the lead ship. Let's see who commands this Armada. The face that appeared on screen made Zarthek reassess his assumptions. The human male looked to be in his 5th decade. Young by Imperious standards but ancient for a species with such brief lifespans. His hair had gone silver at the temples and scars traced white lines across dark skin. But it was the eyes that caught Zarthek's attention, cold, calculating, and utterly unafraid. I am Admiral Kale Arcturus of the United Nations Grand Armada, the human said without preamble. You are ordered to cease hostilities against Viral 7 immediately and withdraw your forces from this system. Zarthek felt his battle lust rising, the ancient instinct that had made the Dominion the terror of 12 sectors. Admiral Arcturus. I am Commander Zarthek, and this system falls within Dominion territorial claims. You are the ones who should withdraw. Your territorial claims are fiction and we both know it. Arcturus leaned forward, and Zarthek saw something dangerous in that movement. Viral 7 is a human colony, registered with the Galactic Council, inhabited by citizens of Earth. You attacked them unprovoked. That was your first mistake. And what? Zarthek clicked his mandibles in amusement. Was my second? Thinking we wouldn't come for them. The transmission cut. Zarthek turned to find his entire bridge crew staring at him. Well, what are you waiting for? Battle stations. All ships prepare for engagement. Alarms shrieked across the Dominion fleet. 60 warships, the force that had reduced Viral 7's defenses to rubble, turned to face the approaching Armada. The tactical display showed the human fleet splitting into combat formations with practiced ease, moving like schools of predatory fish. They're launching fighters, his tactical officer reported. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. The first wave hit like a tsunami. Human strike craft screamed across the void, their engines burning white-hot. But these weren't the clumsy atmospheric fighters they destroyed during the siege. These were sleek, angular machines that moved with unnatural grace. Zarthek watched as his point defense system struggled to track them. They were too fast, too agile, employing tactics he'd never encountered. What are they doing? His tactical officer demanded as sensors painted confused pictures. The human fighters weren't engaging directly. Instead, they deployed what looked like clusters of small spheres that drifted lazily toward Dominion ships. Zarthek's instinct screamed danger. Target those objects. Destroy them before. The spheres exploded into electronic fury. Electromagnetic pulses rippled across the fleet, and suddenly Zarthek's tactical display went dark. Emergency lighting flickered on as backup systems struggled to compensate. Shields down on 8 ships. Point defense offline across the fleet. They hit us with coordinated EMP weapons. How? Zarthek roared. EMP weapons require proximity. Our point defense should have. They're using the drones as kamikazes, sir. Autonomous craft loaded with EMP warheads. Clever. Ruthless. Zarthek felt a cold respect for whoever designed this tactic. The humans had sacrificed hundreds of drones to cripple his fleet's defenses, and now their main force was closing in. The human capital ships opened fire. Kinetic weapons, masses of metal accelerated to relativistic speeds, tore through ships whose shields had been stripped away. Zarthek watched 3 of his cruisers simply cease to exist as tungsten penetrators punched through their hulls with contemptuous ease. Energy weapons followed, not the plasma beams his people used, but focused lasers that cut through armor plating like hot wire through flesh. Return fire. All batteries. Zarthek commanded. The Dominion fleet unleashed its arsenal, and for a moment the battle seemed to balance. Plasma beams struck human ships, their shields flaring brilliant blue. 2 human destroyers broke formation, trailing atmosphere. But where Zarthek expected retreat, he found only escalation. The human fleet had a trick he never anticipated. Commander, we're detecting teleportation signatures. They're boarding us. Zarthek's blood ran cold. Teleportation technology existed, but it was wildly unstable, requiring massive energy expenditures. No sane military would use it in combat. The humans apparently weren't sane. Alarms screamed throughout his flagship as heavily armed human soldiers materialized in key sections. Zarthek pulled up internal sensors and watched in horror as armored figures fought their way through his ship with brutal efficiency. They weren't trying to capture it, they were planting explosives, sabotaging systems, creating chaos. Security teams to all breach points. Seal the... An explosion rocked the ship. His engineering deck disappeared in a fireball. The tactical display, partially restored, showed the same scenario playing out across his fleet. Human special forces were teleporting directly into Dominion vessels, bypassing shields entirely. It was insane. It was brilliant. It was working. Commander, we've lost 4 ships. 6 more are reporting critical damage. Our formation is collapsing. Zarthek watched his carefully planned siege transform into a massacre. The humans weren't fighting like any military force he'd encountered. They weren't following conventional tactics or established protocols. They were improvising, adapting, using weapons and strategies that seemed drawn from nightmare rather than tactical doctrine. Deep below the surface of Viral 7, Governor Sarah Chen listened to the sounds of battle filtering through the bedrock. Explosions. Engines screaming. The distinctive thunder of kinetic weapons striking targets at orbital speeds. The shelters shook with each impact, dust raining from ceiling cracks. Can we get a visual? She asked Marcus. Trying. Most surface cameras are destroyed, but I've got one still functional near the northern settlement. The image that appeared on screen stole Sarah's breath. The sky had transformed into a war zone painted in light and fire. Human ships moved in formations that seemed almost choreographed, their weapons fire creating geometric patterns of destruction. Dominion vessels burned, some breaking apart, others spiraling out of control, trailing debris like dying comets. And at the center of it all, massive and inexorable as a force of nature, came the Indomitable. The dreadnought was a work of terrible beauty, 3 kilometers of weaponized human engineering. Its main batteries fired in sequence, each shot striking with mathematical precision. Sarah watched it plow through the Dominion line like a battleship through paper boats, shields absorbing incoming fire while its own weapons reduced enemies to expanding clouds of plasma. They're winning, someone whispered. Oh God, they're actually winning. Nakamura appeared at her side, his face transformed. Governor, I'm receiving a transmission from Admiral Arcturus. He wants to speak with you directly. Sarah straightened her uniform, torn and filthy from 3 days underground, and nodded. The face that appeared on screen belonged to a man who looked like he'd been forged rather than born. Hard edges, harder eyes, but when he smiled, genuine warmth crept through. Governor Chin. You've had a rough week. Sarah laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. That's one way to put it, Admiral. Hold tight a little longer. We're almost done up here. His expression hardened. But there's a complication. The Dominion commander just activated a doomsday weapon. Planet killer missile, aimed at your colony's tectonic core. We're moving to intercept, but what? The missile's fast. Really fast. And it's shielded heavily enough that our point defense is having trouble getting a lock. Arcturus's jaw clenched. I wanted you to know. In case we don't stop it. Sarah felt the floor drop out from under her. After everything, the siege, the abandonment, the miracle of rescue, it might all end in fire anyway. Do what you can, Admiral, she said quietly. And thank you for coming. Even if... We'll stop it, Arcturus interrupted. I didn't bring my fleet 42 light years to watch you die. Arcturus out. The transmission cut, leaving Sarah staring at a blank screen. Around her, the shelter had gone silent. Everyone had heard. They knew. In orbit, Squadron Leader Maria Reeves received the suicide order and didn't hesitate. "Phoenix Squadron, form up on me," she commanded, her voice steady despite the fear coiling in her gut. "We've got one shot at this." Her squadron, 12 of humanity's finest pilots, fell into formation behind her fighter. They'd trained together, fought together, and now they'd die together if necessary. The Planet Killer missile streaked across her sensors, a massive projectile wrapped in shielding strong enough to shrug off capital ship weapons. But shields didn't protect against physical impacts. Not if you hit hard enough. "Command, this is Phoenix Leader," Maria transmitted to the Indomitable. "We're going to fly into the missile's path and detonate our reactors on contact. That should create enough of an explosion to—" "Phoenix Leader, negative," Arcturus's voice cut through. "We can find another way. I'm not ordering you to. With respect, Admiral, you're not ordering us. We're volunteering." Maria looked at her squadron mates' faces on her screen, young, scared, determined. "Tell our families we love them. Tell them we kept humanity's world safe. Phoenix Squadron out." She cut the channel before he could argue, before she could change her mind. The missile grew larger in her view screen, its surface burning with atmospheric friction as it plunged toward Viral 7. "It's been an honor flying with you all," Maria said softly. "Honor's ours, Lead," her wingman replied. "See you on the other side." Phoenix Squadron accelerated, pushing their engines past safety limits. Maria whispered a prayer she hadn't spoken since childhood. The missile filled her entire view screen now, close enough to see the alien glyphs etched into its surface. At the last second she smiled. The explosion lit up the planet like a second sun. A new balance of power. The shockwave from Phoenix Squadron's sacrifice rolled across the battlefield like divine judgment, and for 3 heartbeats, everyone stopped fighting to witness it. Admiral Cale Arcturus watched from the Indomitable's command deck as his tactical display showed 12 friendly signatures wink out simultaneously. 12 names he'd known. 12 families he'd have to write to. Maria Reeves, who'd flown in his wing during the Ganymede campaign. Jason Park, who'd beaten him at poker every damn time. Elena Cortez, who'd been planning to propose to her girlfriend when they got home. Gone. All of them. But the Planet Killer was gone too, its remains scattering across space like metallic snow. "Sir." His executive officer's voice was thick with emotion. "Should we observe a moment of—" "We honor them by finishing this," Arcturus interrupted, his voice cold enough to freeze helium. He turned to his weapons officer. "Target the Dominion flagship. I want every gun we have pointed at that ship. And open a channel to Commander Zarthak." The Imperieth commander's face appeared on screen, and Arcturus noted with savage satisfaction that fear had replaced arrogance in those alien eyes. Zarthak's bridge was a wreck, sparking consoles, smoke, and what looked like bodies in the background. "You just murdered 12 of my people," Arcturus said quietly. Too quietly. "They were volunteers, heroes who gave their lives to protect 80,000 civilians you tried to exterminate. So here's what happens next, Commander. You will order your remaining ships to power down weapons and surrender immediately. Or I will reduce your fleet to atoms, starting with your flagship." "You wouldn't dare," Zarthak hissed, but his mandibles trembled. "The Dominion would declare war on your entire species. You'd be—" "I don't care." Arcturus leaned forward, and the look in his eyes made Zarthak flinch. "I came here with the largest fleet humanity has ever assembled. We built it in secret over 10 years, anticipating exactly this scenario, a galaxy that would abandon us when we needed help. You wanted to teach us a lesson about standing alone? Congratulations. You succeeded. Now let me teach you one about what happens when you push humans too far." The Indomitable's main batteries powered up, their charging coils painting the view screen in electric blue. Arcturus watched Zarthak's face cycle through emotions, rage, calculation, and finally defeated acceptance. "I yield," Zarthak finally said. "The Dominion fleet surrenders." "Smart choice." Arcturus signaled his fleet. "All ships cease fire. Secure the Dominion vessels and take their command staff into custody." He fixed Zarthak with a look of pure contempt. "You're going to stand trial for war crimes, Commander? I hope it was worth it." The transmission cut, and Arcturus allowed himself one long breath before turning to his crew. "Status report. Dominion fleet neutralized, sir. We've lost 8 ships, with 17 more reporting significant damage. Casualties?" His executive officer swallowed hard. 2,341 dead. 4,000 wounded. Each number was a knife. Arcturus felt their weight, added them to all the others he carried. But grief was a luxury he couldn't afford yet. Prepare a shuttle, he ordered. I'm going planetside. And someone get me a casualty list for Phoenix Squadron. I want full details on each pilot for the families. Sir, shouldn't you? That's an order, Commander. 30 minutes later, Arcturus's shuttle descended through smoke and ash to land outside Viral 7's main shelter entrance. The surface was a wasteland, scorched earth, melted infrastructure, craters that still glowed red from orbital bombardment. It looked like hell's parking lot. Governor Sarah Chen met him at the shelter entrance, and Arcturus saw the toll 3 days of siege had taken. She was gaunt, hollow-eyed, moving like someone who'd forgotten what sleep was. But she stood straight, met his gaze without flinching. Admiral Arcturus, she said, offering her hand. I wish we were meeting under better circumstances. Governor. He took her hand, noting how it trembled slightly. Your people showed remarkable courage. I'm sorry we couldn't get here sooner. You're here now. That's what matters. She gestured to the ruined landscape. Though I'm afraid there's not much left to save. Buildings can be rebuilt. People can't. Arcturus pulled up a holographic projector. My fleet's bringing construction equipment, emergency supplies, medical personnel, and enough raw materials to rebuild everything twice over. We'll also be leaving a permanent garrison, 2 carrier groups with full support infrastructure. Sarah blinked. Admiral, we can't possibly. It's not a request, Governor. No human colony will ever face this alone again. That's the new policy, effective immediately. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. We're also announcing what I'm calling the Arcturus Doctrine. Any attack on a human settlement, anywhere in the galaxy, will be treated as an attack on Earth itself and met with immediate military response. The other species won't like that. The Galactic Council can go to hell, Arcturus said bluntly. They had their chance to help. They chose politics over lives. We're done playing by their rules. A commotion behind Sarah drew their attention. Colonists were emerging from the shelters. Tentative at first, then in a flood. Children, elderly, everyone who'd survived the siege blinking in the smoky daylight. They saw the human ships overhead, saw their admiral standing with their governor, and something broke loose. Cheering. Crying. People collapsing in relief. Arcturus found himself surrounded by colonists wanting to touch him, thank him, confirm he was real. A little girl, maybe 6 years old, pushed through the crowd and hugged his leg. You came, she said simply. Everyone said nobody would come, but you did. Arcturus knelt down to her level, and for the first time since the battle began, his controlled mask cracked. What's your name, sweetheart? Emma. Emma, I need you to understand something. We will always come. No matter where you are, no matter who threatens you. You're human, which means you're family. And family doesn't abandon family. Okay. Emma nodded solemnly, then handed him a crumpled piece of paper, a child's drawing of stick figures holding hands beneath a sun. This is for you. To say thank you. Arcturus took the drawing like it was made of glass, carefully folding it and tucking it into his uniform pocket. I'll treasure this, Emma. Thank you. As he stood, Marcus Webb pushed through the crowd, his communications gear still strapped to his back. Admiral, you need to hear this. Transmissions are flooding in from across the galaxy. Everyone wants to know what just happened. Arcturus nodded. Patch them through to my ship. It's time the galaxy heard our position. An hour later, aboard the Indomitable, Arcturus stood before his entire fleet via quantum link transmission. But he wasn't just speaking to his forces. Marcus had arranged for the signal to broadcast across every major communication network in known space. The Galactic Council would hear this. So would the Vex conglomerate, the Seraphim Alliance, and every species that had ignored Viral 7's cries for help. 3 days ago, Arcturus began, his voice carrying across light years. The colony of Viral 7 was attacked by the Imperieth Dominion. 80,000 human civilians faced annihilation. They sent distress signals to every major power in the galaxy, begging for assistance. And do you know what they received? Polite refusals. Diplomatic cowardice. Thoughts and prayers. He paused, letting that sink in. The galaxy abandoned them because helping humans wasn't politically convenient. Because risking conflict with the Dominion seemed like too high a price for human lives. So let me be absolutely clear about humanity's response. Arcturus's expression hardened into something that would haunt diplomatic channels for years. We've spent the last decade building this fleet in secret. Not because we're warmongers but because we learned a hard truth. In this galaxy you can't rely on anyone but yourself. And so today I'm announcing the Arcturus Doctrine. Any attack on a human settlement, colony, ship, or citizen will be considered an act of war against Earth. And we will respond with the full might of our military. His tactical officer brought up displays showing the Grand Armada. Every ship, every weapon the sleeping giant humanity had become. We're not asking for alliances. We're not begging for protection. We're informing you of reality. Attack humans and we will come for you. Every time. Without exception. We'll cross the galaxy if necessary. We'll ignore treaties, borders, and diplomatic protests. Because we've learned your rules and we've decided we don't like them. Across known space, diplomatic channels exploded. The Vex conglomerate's merchant princes watched the broadcast with mandibles clicking in alarm. The Seraphim Alliance's crystalline elders convened emergency sessions. The Galactic Council erupted in chaos as species that had ignored Viral 7 now scrambled to understand this new threat. Humanity, the young species everyone had dismissed as primitive and weak, had just changed the rules of galactic politics with overwhelming firepower and absolute resolve. In the Imperieth Dominion's capital, Supreme Commander Vaxthal watched Arcturus's speech 3 times before issuing orders. Human space was now forbidden territory. Any commander who engaged human forces without explicit authorization would be executed. The price of underestimating humanity had been paid in blood and burning ships. On Viral 7, Governor Chen stood with Admiral Arcturus as reconstruction began. Human engineering crews worked alongside colonists, raising new structures from the ashes. Medical personnel treated the wounded. Counselors helped traumatized children process what they'd survived. What happens now? Sarah asked quietly. Arcturus watched his people work, thinking of Phoenix Squadron, of all the names on his casualty list. Now we make sure this never happens again. We build more ships. We establish more garrisons. We show the galaxy that humanity keeps its promises. He turned to face her. And we remember. Every name, every sacrifice, every lesson learned in fire. Marcus approached with his portable comm unit. Admiral, the Galactic Council is requesting an urgent diplomatic session. They want to discuss your doctrine. Tell them I'll attend. Eventually. Arcturus smiled coldly. But first we're going to visit every human colony in this sector. Show them the fleet. Make sure everyone knows what we've built. Let the galaxy sweat a little. As his shuttle lifted off, carrying him back to the Indomitable, Arcturus pulled Emma's drawing from his pocket. Stick figures holding hands beneath the sun. Such a simple image. Such an impossible dream in this harsh galaxy. But maybe he thought that was the point. Humanity had entered the galactic stage expecting friendship and finding only cold politics. They'd learned the hard way that idealism was a luxury species earned with strength. So they'd built the strength first. Above Viral 7, the Grand Armada maintained its orbital vigil, a promise made in steel and fire. The galaxy had taught humanity to stand alone. Now humanity would teach the galaxy why that was a mistake. Because humans protected their own. Because family meant something. Because when the stars went silent and the galaxy looked away, there would always be someone who answered. They called it the Arcturus Doctrine. But the colonists who'd lived through the siege had another name for it. Hope. And across the galaxy, that hope, backed by the most powerful fleet the young species had ever assembled, was beginning to redraw the map of power among the stars. The galaxy had tried to ignore humanity. Now they'd never be able to look away.